Welcome back to MetFlex and Chill. This is your host, Rachel Gregory, and I'm here with Caroline Ofenstein. Did I say that right?
Close enough, yeah.
Can, can you say it so we know?
It's Ofenstein. I blame my
Ofenstein.
husband. Yeah.
I like I never say names right. This is probably like the fifth podcast in a row that I've messed up the name. So I apologize. My listeners are used to it. I always butcher people's names. So I'm gonna let you give it a little introduction. Tell us your full name again, and tell us like just who you are, about your nutrition and fitness journey, and then we'll kind of dive into some more specifics as we go. Because I'm super excited to chat with you. Because I know we have kind of like a similar background in that sense.
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. My name is Caroline Ofenstein. It's a really hard one. I work right now. I do full-time nutrition coaching online, and I work with Tailored Coaching Method. So we're kind of a collective of coaches that all work together, and we work with lifestyle clients, hardcore, CrossFit athletes and other athletes, bodybuilders, and kind of everything in between. And I have been with that team for a little over 2 years now. Before that was kind of coaching on my own, but I'm really happy I joined up with the team. I like that whole teamwork kind of vibe, especially with the working from home. It's nice to have people to collaborate with. And I guess kind of backtracking. So how I got into the whole nutrition space was really via CrossFit. So I was kind of late to the fitness game, I suppose, because I didn't really, all through college, it was more of like pizza and PBR diet and some cardio for the most part. And then I studied business actually in college. And then once I graduated is when I found CrossFit and just like drank the Kool-Aid hardcore, all CrossFit all the time, every day. And I realized, I guess when I joined CrossFit is when I got really into kind of paleo. That's when paleo was CrossFit's, bread and butter. And I realized at some point, my workouts just weren't really improving anymore, and I was feeling kind of drained. And that's when I really started to dig into nutrition a little bit more, because I'd really enjoyed learning all those basic quote unquote healthy habits of eating paleo. But I was like, well, why do I not feel great then? And why aren't I getting stronger or fitter? And during that time is also when I moved out to Colorado from the Midwest. So I was raft guiding. So I had a super active job. I was coaching CrossFit because I had quickly become a CFL1, and then trying to kind of eat paleo, but feeling like crap. So that's when I really dug into nutrition and went through a couple certification courses and just kind of started experimenting on myself and working with fellow athletes to see if I could help them. And finally was at a place where I was like, this is 100% what I want to do. Like, I'd never had that feeling before until I started working with people on nutrition. And I was like, yes, this is my jam. Like, this is what people talk about when they talk about finding their passion. So slowly just started learning more about macros and, what works for my body. And like I said, working with people at my gym and around me. And kind of also during that time transitioned a little bit away from CrossFit and got more into bodybuilding, just to experiment with another sphere of fitness, and really, really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed changing up my training, continue to enjoy changing that up and experimenting with different nutrition strategies. So yeah, I guess that kind of in a roundabout way gets me to where I am today.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like, I've heard, because I found you because I was listening to you on another podcast, and I was just like, everything you were saying I was like resonating with, because literally that's exactly how kind of that happened. Like, I found CrossFit after I did triathlons in undergrad, and then when I went to
Oh,
grad school
awesome.
I found CrossFit. So the same with you, and then kind of went through the same trajectory, like loved it, drank the Kool-Aid, did it for a few years, wasn't seeing the results that I wanted. Kind of, you know, initially I started doing it just because I liked that competitive atmosphere. I wasn't
Oh yeah.
really looking to optimize my physique or anything like that. But then I did want to get more into that, and so same thing as you. So super, super interesting. So I do want to kind of dive into a little bit more of like your transition from CrossFit to bodybuilding. And then also maybe talk a little bit about your kind of bodybuilding history. So going from like starting, and I know you just finished your second show, right?
It was my
Or your
second
third
pro
show?
show, my
Pro show.
fourth
Okay.
fourth show total. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how many years? So when was your first show?
Just about a year ago, I had a crazy
Okay.
path into bodybuilding. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. I want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like we were talking about, that CrossFit burnout, unfortunately, I feel like it's way too common of a story, which sounds like you're well aware of that too.
Yeah.
It's just so fun and so competitive that you like get so absorbed in it, and you kind of, at least for me, I would like be like, I'm not really injured. Like, I'm not really hurting. I'll just do 7 more wads today. Like what? But actually, so who I work with now, Cody Boom Boom, he was one of my first personal coaches for myself. And he's the one who kind of gave me the idea that if I wanted to cut down for a photo shoot as I was starting to build my nutrition coaching, he was like, well, what if we pump the brakes on CrossFit and you add in some bodybuilding? Because it's literally building your body, whereas CrossFit is a sport, which we also a lot of times forget about, right? So he was like, let's add in some complementary training to really focus on hypertrophy and focus on taking your physique to the next level. And then you can keep in CrossFit for the social aspect and the fun of the intensity and all that. I was like, okay, sure. Like, why not? I'll try it. And I have this conversation with a lot of CrossFitters as well. Like, hey, why don't we add in some bodybuilding? Because not only does it help your physique, but my recovery improved tenfold because you're not leaving the gym every day just like spent or like dead on the floor with a sweat angel, right? You're getting a good pump. You're focusing on muscle activation. You're still getting stronger, but you leave the gym like, yeah, I feel pretty good. So that was a huge change for me. I immediately started feeling better. I saw awesome physique changes that I hadn't really seen before because bodybuilding training is much more specific to, right? To like focusing on the different body parts. So yeah, that was kind of the start of it. And then I actually kind of unfortunately, but hindsight is a blessing, but I had a falling out with the gym owners that I was coaching at. And so we kind of just parted ways. And that was the beginning of 2019. And so since I kind of broke up with CrossFit, I was like, well, I guess I might as well go all in on bodybuilding and see what happens. And that's when I went into my first like full on gaining phase with my goal to put on size, and turned into, I'm going to sign up for a bikini division competition.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I definitely want to get into your building phase and kind of talk about nutrition with that as well. And I think, again, we have like such similar story. Like I had a kind of falling out with CrossFit, but it was because I actually went too far and injured myself. Got a back injury and just like couldn't really do anything. I had just like, I was writing a book at the time. I was like, CrossFit was my outlet for, like, the part of the day where I could just get out of my head, and like, that was like kind of like, I looked at it as my meditation part of the day, right? And we know that a lot of people do that, right? They're like, when I work with clients, I'm like, okay, what's like your self-care practice? Like, what do you do? They're like, oh, I go to the gym. I'm like, no. Like, what? Because we know, right?
That's
like,
still another output. Yeah.
Exactly. And so and we can talk about stress and all of that and recovery. So yeah, again, I think it was even the same time, like fall of 2019, maybe, or maybe it was 2018 that I stopped doing CrossFit. But I did the same thing. Like I went all in with just like focusing on my nutrition and focusing on bodybuilding and stuff like that. So anyway, I do want to, so we kind of talked about, I had some listener questions, and some of these are related to a few of the questions that I had as well. So I'm kind of looking at my notes here, but let's talk about the building phase a little bit. So what are your thoughts on women embracing a building phase, and why might it be necessary to be able to create their quote unquote best physique?
Yeah, such an awesome question. And if any of my clients are listening to this, they're probably rolling their eyes because I feel like I'm building a reputation of talking women into doing like a lean gaining phase because I'm such a fan. But exactly what you said in the question, like a building phase allows you to truly change your physique over time. Because if you think about it, like if I diet down and let's say I lose, 10 pounds of, we all know that we don't lose purely fat. You're going to lose a little bit of muscle and some body fat. And then if I just kind of hang out 10 pounds lighter for a little while and diet again, being an already lean individual, my body's not really going to change at all. If anything, I'll probably just lose more muscle mass at that point if I already got kind of lean. So the idea of kind of taking a break, enjoying being lean, but then maybe you got lean for a photo shoot or something and you're like, okay, now I want to take my physique to the next level. You're not going to be able to do that by just keeping calories low and trying to stay as lean as possible. To build muscle, you have to feed your body, right? Which I know us women get scared of. Like I still do. If I'm like, oh, I need to put on muscle mass, I should probably eat, X thousand calories. And I'm like, ooh, wow, that seems like a lot at first. But really, those beliefs are just kind of bullshit from the diet culture that we live in. Like us ladies tend to be so scared of eating enough to actually fuel our body, eating enough to get stronger. But it's so, so beautiful over time if you can just embrace that process. And it really, really, really pays dividends to actually building your muscle mass and getting that like athletic look like I work out kind of physique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm actually in my like first official, I guess you could say, building phase. I've been here probably the last like what are we in October? Is
I
it
know, like,
almost October?
is
I
it
don't even
still
know what
2020?
I know, right? I'm like, is 2020 over yet? Yeah, so it's probably in like 3 or 4 months,
Yes.
um, this is coming out of a cut for the summer, which was very interesting, but we don't talk about that right now. But anyway, it's just like I'm in that first official kind of part of my journey with building, and it's like watching the scale go up. It's scary, right? Because I went through like my first kind of body recomposition where I really after CrossFit, where I really focused on, you know, building muscle and periodization and with both my nutrition and training. And I got down to like a lean physique, did a photo shoot. Then I just kind of maintained for like all of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I maintained and I was in like a slight surplus. And then I went into another cut for a cruise that I was supposed to go on in May. That didn't happen. So anyway, and then I was like, all right, so I got back down, like I did another cut and exactly what you said. I was like, oh, like, I look lean, but I don't have as much muscle as I want. So now it's time to actually commit to like a longer building phase. And I think especially with women, it's like watching the scale go up after you've seen it come down is like so mentally hard. And I think that I think that's also, I mean, you're a coach, I'm a coach, I have my own coach. You probably have your own coach,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so important to like have a coach to help guide you, even if you know exactly like what you're doing, why you're doing it. It's like having that outside perspective and having someone else, that you have to check in with every single week. And that's like getting you out of your head is so important. Like I think it's more important in a building phase personally than a fat loss phase, just because it's like so, especially for women, because it's just so like hard to see the scale go up.
And it takes so much time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
women, we don't just, I mean, even guys who are natural, like nobody just puts on muscle easily, right? So it's like you have to stay patient for, at least like 3 to 6 months and eat
Yeah.
and be okay with the scale going up to see those gains down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about a little bit how, when we do like lose fat, it's not just fat, there's a little muscle that comes along with it. And that's the same with the opposite, right? When we're building muscle, like you can't just build muscle purely. Like there is going to come some fat with that. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people just get nervous about because they're like, oh, I don't want to like put on all this like extra fat? Like how do I know like if I'm putting on muscle or fat? Do you have like some like ways that you kind of work your clients through that?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's part of the process, but it can also be minimized, right? So a huge part of that is going to be food quality and actually paying attention to what you're eating. Like that's why I kind of call it lean gaining versus bulking makes me think of like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and whatever the hell he used to eat. Like, I don't even know, weird things. But you don't want to like dirty bulk and say, I'm putting on muscle, so I'm going to eat a dozen donuts every weekend. Big difference between that and beefing up your post-workout meal of protein oatmeal or whatever it might be, right? So that can really, really help minimize fat gain, but also watching biofeedback. So are your workouts actually improving? Hopefully if you're committed to a gaining process, you're following a specific program and tracking your weights lifted. So if you see the scale go up, but you added 10 pounds to your back squat, okay, there's a good chance that you're definitely building muscle, right?
Yeah.
And then watching photos and measurements too can be helpful because we all get a little bit in our heads, right? With like looking in the mirror or obsessing over how a certain pair of pants fit or something like that. But if you're actually checking in with your measurements and looking at photos, you can really start to see those changes in body composition over time. So I guess a big piece of advice is to not get too hung up on like one piece of data and continue looking at the big picture of your workouts and how you feel. Cause that's another part of lean gaining that's super, super fun is you get way more freedom and flexibility with your food choices, like within reason, like I just mentioned, but you also usually feel awesome because you're not hungry in between your meals. You're not going to bed hungry. Like happens to me during a contest prep, you're able to push your workouts and have really good energy in the gym, have good sex drive, hopefully have a regular period, all those types of things that we overlook. It's really nice to see those come back too.
Yeah, for sure. And those are kind of like all the kind of things you just mentioned are like the kind of negatives of dieting and being in a calorie deficit and why, especially for women, like we can't be living in a calorie deficit forever, right? Especially if we want to, a lot of people say they want to look toned, right? Well, what does that even mean? Like if you're not,
Oh
if you don't
my
have any
gosh,
muscle,
I
like
hate
how
the word toned. Oh.
it's just like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I don't like it either, but it is something that I think your dog is
I'm
so
so sorry.
no, it's cute. I saw him like in the background on the stairs up there, and I was like, oh my gosh.
She probably sees like a squirrel and is going nuts.
No, it's totally fine. I'm actually getting a puppy in a week from today, so
Oh boy, buckle
yeah,
up for potty training.
yeah, I'm ready for like no sleep for the next month, but we might have to talk about that off air. You might need
Right.
some tips. But anyway, so back to kind of like the calorie deficit thing. So can we talk a little bit about like, and you've kind of already talked about this, but like the concept of periodizing your nutrition throughout, say a year, and when you go, if you are someone listening to this and you do have like, you're like, all right, like I think I need to hire a coach. I think I need to focus on something like I want to, most people are like, I want to lose body fat, right? And build muscle at the same time, which we know can happen, but we could talk about all that. But in terms of actually like setting yourself up for success and looking at the long term, I think that's something that a lot of people tend to just not really think about. It's like, okay, I'm going to spend I'm going to hire a coach for these next 2 to 3 months, lose as much body fat as I can, and then just go off on my own and maintain that. Usually it doesn't happen like that. So can we kind of talk about the importance of maybe, having a longer term plan and not just looking at like 2 months ahead of time, but let's look at 12 months from now where you want to be, and let's work our way back from there. And how, like for example, for you, like if you had a client coming on and they're like, all right, what do the next 12 months look like in terms of how I want to periodize my nutrition to optimize my physique, and be able to maintain my results, longer term. Is that something you can kind of talk to?
Oh yeah. I love talking about periodization because I think it's so underrated because we all are like, diet, diet, diet. It's like, well, no, first of all, that's not fun at all and might destroy your body.
Yeah.
But Yeah, how I usually personally like to set my goals kind of a year out and break them down, and that's really what I like to do with clients too. So how I start with a new client, we always call it the primer phase. And I like to think of the primer phase as the first 2 to 4 weeks I'm working with someone new, and really just like laying a solid foundation. Because if you put in the work to just get consistent with tracking, dial in your workout schedule, make sure you're sleeping, right? If you're not sleeping, you're not going to see results. Like, make sure you're managing your stress. What else is going on with your lifestyle that we can dial in to make sure you're going to be more successful? That's going to make the diet so much easier. And some people definitely struggle with this part, and I can relate because I'm kind of impatient.
Same.
but but it's so worth it to just have those couple weeks to build that foundation, because it's not like, you can do a 30-day challenge, you can do whatever, Whole 30 or any of those kind of like cleanses or things like that, but how many people maintain those results? Like, nobody.
Yeah.
So you have to really just set yourself up for success. So that's kind of what I think of the primer phase as, is let's just get dialed in so that when we start your diet, it's going to be your last diet. You're not going to have to yo-yo again for the rest of your life, right? We're going to set up strong so that this is your last diet.
Mhm.
And when we're picking a time frame for dieting, which is kind of like the progressive phase where you're really getting after a goal, I like to have people look at their lifestyle and their schedule, because some people will come to me and they're like, I want to get into a diet right away. And I'm like, okay, well, what do the next like 2 to 3 months look like for you? Well, I've got, this work thing going on, and then my kids are doing this travel soccer tournament, so I'll be gone for that. And then I've got this, and this. And they list off like 5 weeks of things that they're busy with. And I'm like, okay, well, are you going to have control of your food and your workout schedule during that time? Maybe not. So let's pick a chunk of time strategically that you can give it 100%, because there's nothing suckier or like more demotivating than trying to go into a diet and then life throws you a curveball and you maybe don't see progress as fast as you want, and then you're dieting longer or dieting harder. That is not fun, right?
Yeah.
So like, actually thinking about what does your life look like, and picking a time of year, or like maybe a couple months out of the year, or if you have more weight to lose, maybe you're committing more time to a diet phase. But regardless, being strategic with when you actually want to diet. Like, I don't know anyone who would want to start a diet, like November 1st, for example. That would probably be a really bad time. So yeah, that would be like a time of the year, we're coming up on the holidays. That would be a great time to maybe be at maintenance, or make sure you talk with your coach about having diet breaks, and so that you don't feel overly restricted around the holidays. That's also part of periodizing your plan. Um, and then as far as kind of the last big piece of that, what I like to think of it as is like a recovery phase. So anytime you do have a diet, I never, ever, ever want someone to be done working with me when they're in a calorie deficit. Because like we were just talking about, it's hard to hold yourself accountable to increasing calories. It can be scary and it can really mess with your mind.
Yeah.
So I always like to end my time working with someone going through a proper reverse diet, where we're trying to keep them as lean as we can, maintain their results, but slowly, strategically add back in calories, decrease cardio if we added in a lot of cardio or something like that, and make sure their biofeedback climbs back up. Because let's be real, nobody feels like a 10 out of 10 when they're dieting. So we want to get you feeling good again, so that you can sustain your results and you don't end a diet with a week of binging and then trying to diet again immediately. So that's kind of the last piece that I think of periodization, with that recovery phase. And that's also a really good time to practice kind of intuitive eating, if that's something people are interested in. If they're like, I really want to take a break from tracking, like how do I transition from tracking macros every day to more of like a lifestyle intuitive eating approach? That recovery phase, that kind of last piece of the puzzle, is really important for that aspect too.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. And I think that, maintaining your results is probably the hardest part. Like, everybody thinks the diet, well, if you've never gone through this periodization before, like a lot of people think, the diet is the hardest part, but in reality, it's probably not. It's the after the diet part, right? The maintenance side of things, and like practicing maintenance tends to be the hardest part for everyone, because it's like, again, maybe you see the scale going up a little bit and you're like, you get freaked out by that. And so I completely agree. And I think that all in all, like, if you're someone listening to this and you want to go into a fat loss phase or want to, whatever it may be, like, you have to commit the time and like invest in yourself, right? And invest in the process, rather than just saying, okay, I'm going to do this for like 2 months and then I'll be good to go forever. Like, it doesn't usually work like that.
That'd be nice, man. That's what they all sell us, right? But
yeah. Okay, cool. So let's dive into a few of these other questions. We talked about that. So someone said, where can I start if I'm interested in bodybuilding?
Fun question. Yeah. So I would definitely recommend the World Wide Web. I've got on the tailoredcoachingmethod.com website, I wrote a couple blogs after I had done my first show, and kind of like what I learned and what I wished I knew, and how to kind of figure out if you're ready to compete. So those would be some blogs I would definitely recommend. Talking to people that are in the space, you can always ask me questions personally, talk to other competitors that you look up to. And if you live in a city where there are bodybuilding shows, just go to one. Just go to, the night show of one, see what people are doing, see, who's there, what the process is like, what it sounds like to listen to the judges and what they ask of you. That can be super helpful too. And if you can't do that, there are tons of shows on YouTube, so you could at least watch them online. But yeah, I think that would be a great place to start. Read some blogs, do some research. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think that some people kind of, think, all right, well, I'm going to commit to doing this bodybuilding show and not really understanding like what it actually takes to do it. And like, I haven't ever done a bodybuilding show, but I've gone through like periods of time, like, okay, I think I want to do a show. I don't know. I don't know. So I've never gotten to the point where I'm like, I want to do a show. And I'm still getting there. I'm kind of going through this building phase now, and maybe like in a year, I'm going to rethink it. But I think just understanding like why you're actually doing it is really important.
Definitely.
Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I'd say that with any goal, but especially if you're going to set a goal that's so strict, like know what it takes, know why you want to do it, because when you're hungry, it's easy to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. Why did I sign up for this?
Yeah, exactly. And you did mention, so in the blog, you mentioned that you had some takeaways from your first competition. So this is actually a question that I had, so we can jump into it. Is there like one takeaway from your first competition to your last competition, which you just ended, which was just last weekend, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there like one thing that you can think of that maybe you realized or learned, or even, it doesn't even have to be like from that one to this one, or just something in general?
Yeah. So I've done 4 shows at this point, and I've noticed that the more I can think about me and staying in my lane and just being or presenting a better version of myself, the more fun I have, the happier I am, and usually the better I do. When I get wrapped up in like, who else might be there? Oh my God, she looks so amazing. What if this happens? Like, what if I don't get first call outs? What if I place badly? When my mind goes down that route versus just like staying in my lane and trying to be the best version of myself, there's a big difference in, mentally how I feel, physically how I feel. So I think in the nutrition and fitness space, like we're people like us, are starting to talk more about mindset, but that is something that I just have really seen how my mindset can impact things. So I guess a piece of advice would be just like making sure that like we just said, like, you know why you're competing and that you are taking care of yourself mentally and physically, because your mind can do some crazy stuff when you're going after a big goal. So the more that you can be in control of your thoughts, you know, focus on gratitude, focus on positivity, it makes a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. I completely agree. And I think that's also for me, like that's, I think what shifted me to be able to see results in the beginning as well, when I did kind of get off the CrossFit train and focus more on the physique stuff, like shifting into doing like a morning routine and getting that dialed in, doing meditation practices, which I always thought was like super woo woo. And I was like, I'm not a meditative person. Like I'm not going to do that. And, you know, getting into that and getting into the mindset piece of things and becoming overall aware of more things within that. Is there any do you have any type of routine that you follow, you know, on a daily basis to get you into the right mindset?
Yeah, I do a lot of meditation and journaling work. I really like Insight Timer, the app. I'm a huge, huge fan. They have courses on there that you can take. They have obviously like a timer. They have different guided meditations, different sleep meditations. So I use that in some form every day, whether I'm just trying to sit quietly or I'm listening to a course about, you know, like I was just listening to one about detaching from outcomes, which I really, really liked. So I usually try to do that at some point, either first thing in the morning or before bed. And then I do also try to journal every day. Like as I have my coffee before I get on social media, like do not pick up Instagram first thing, Caroline, is what I tell myself.
Yeah.
Pick up your journal first. And that's helpful too, because sometimes I'll just sit there and stare at it. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to write about today. Cause I try to not give myself like strict rules. And then I'll just start writing, like start kind of doing a brain dump. And it is crazy how like mentally detoxing that can be, to just kind of let go of anything you might be holding on to, which sometimes I'm not even aware. And
Mm-hmm.
I start journaling and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders that I didn't even know was there. So yeah, I'm big on having at least some type of self-care or mindset ritual in the morning, and then also try to have one at night too, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agree. I definitely do like a lot of um, journaling more at night in terms of like brain dumping, like you said, because I don't know. I feel like, especially, you know, and you know this too, like coaching people and, you know, being involved in either whether you're running your own business or you're involved in a smaller business or whatever, any type of business, anything in life, right? It's like it's really hard to turn your mind off at some periods of time at
Mm-hmm.
night. Um, Especially if you're in like a stressful period of your job or whatever it is, and doing like a brain dump and just like getting everything out on paper is like so crazy what it can do to just like get you out of your head. And so like I always recommend that for clients if they're having like if they're struggling to fall asleep or you know any of that. So and then also the morning routine, I love that. So
Yeah. We're like, adults are like kids in the fact that, you know, you always have a nighttime routine if you're like taking care of a child, right? Like you read them a story, you
mm-hmm.
then they brush their teeth or, you know, whatever it looks like. But adults need that too. We also need that wind down time to decompress from
Mm-hmm.
the crazy, stressful, you know, life that we all live today. So yeah, give yourself that wind down time.
Yeah, 100%. Cool, cool. So we have a few more questions. Someone said the best ways to build and or maintain muscle over 50 years old for a female in menopause.
Yeah, that can be a tough age group for sure, but don't let the fact that you're just, you know, we all age, don't let that be like a limiting factor. Like when I used to live in Salida, Colorado, which is a beautiful mountain town. Now I live a little bit more in the city, but one of my best friends there, my go-to workout partner, she's in her 50s and her shoulders are so beautiful. Like I hope mine look like hers someday. Like she is jacked, and she is a woman in her 50s and she's crushing it. But she, you know, the things she does, kind of all the things I would recommend, which she follows a lifting program, right? So not just like walking into the gym willy-nilly doing what you feel like, and also kind of leaning away probably from group fitness or like really cardio intense classes, right? Because if you want to build and maintain muscle, you have to use that tissue.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely recommend following a strength program, just whatever appeals to you, finding something that you like. And then eating a diet high in protein is going to be really helpful too, because our ability to synthesize new muscle protein declines as we age. And then women, I believe it's after 30, we lose like 3% of our muscle mass per year. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's a similar statistic to that. So, which is terrifying. Oh my God. But that's why we actually need more protein as we age, especially if strength and body composition are our main goal. So making sure you're getting a variety of protein spread evenly throughout the day is kind of how I like to do it. And using that tissue in the gym and lifting, I mean, those are two things that are going to be very helpful. And then just general rules for anyone, sleep and stress management. That's going to also be hugely helpful to allow your body the opportunity to recover and take care of that tissue that you're working.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agree. And I told this story before on the podcast, but my mom just started finally, after like years of trying to get her to like follow a lifting program and hire a trainer and stuff. She finally did it in January, which is, it's crazy that it's almost January 2021. The time is flying in this pandemic. But anyway, she like she literally recomped her body, right? Like she lost a little bit of weight, but she like put on so much muscle in such a short period of time because she never really, and she's oh my gosh, 63 or 64. And she's never really followed like a progressive training program and had like, lifting 3 days a week with the trainer and actually focusing on that and, focusing on getting enough protein. And she completely, at 65, she completely changed her body in a few months. And she's absolutely loving it. And I'm like, this is an exact example of like, you're never too old to like build muscle and even recomp. Like there's no limit on that. So
yeah, that's so awesome. Go mom.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Okay, so I know we're kind of getting. You have some time, right?
Oh yeah, we're good.
All right, cool. All right. So speaking of time, the next question is: I'm low on time. What are some of the top exercises females should do every day?
So I don't typically, I guess first off, discriminate between like workout types for men and women. The fitness industry makes us think that we do, but if anything, I mean, guys might want to train like bis and tris more and ladies might want to train glutes more, but overall, I mean, you don't need to look for like a lady specific program. But if you're short on time, I would say you probably want to pick a full body workout program. And again, following a program like is so important to actually make sure that you're hitting progressive overload, that you're hitting enough volume each week, and to save you time when you walk into the gym, because you shouldn't just be wandering around. You should know what you're going to do that day. It's so, so helpful. So I would probably say for a minimum, I'd recommend like 3 days of full body training. So within that, you have a lot of options. So I'd say the next most important thing is just finding something that you like, that you are going to stick to, because I would hate to see someone do, 3 days a week for a month and then stop. Yeah. So try to find a program that you enjoy, that you like. There are so many options out there, but as far as movements to do every day, I mean, I would just say you're wanting to look for something that's balanced. So that has pushing movements, pulling movements, hip hinge movements like deadlifts or glute bridges or something like that. And then knee movements, so like squats and lunges. If you're hitting kind of those 4 categories of compound lifts, you're probably looking at a good program.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, and I totally agree too about, there's no like female versus male lifting programs. Like it doesn't really work like that, but in the sense of, yes, like if you are, maybe you're more advanced and you're looking to develop certain body parts, yeah, like you said, guys might want to develop their chest more, girls might want to develop their shoulders more, their glutes, or whatever it may be. So that's where you could probably, that would be like more of your accessory or isolation,
like a specialization phase or something. Yeah,
exactly. But everybody should probably have like the main the main movement patterns down, and that's where you would want to start. Like you said, vertical push-pull, horizontal push-pull, knee dominant, hip dominant. So sweet. All right. So the next question, these are like kind of like broad questions, but you're doing a really good job at answering them.
Nice. Bring it on.
Yeah. The next question is, do supplements help, especially if you have low androgens?
So, okay, let's just say, do supplements help first?
Yeah.
So I always like to think of it as supplements are exactly what they sound like. They are supplemental to an already solid diet, right? So if you're looking at a pyramid, supplements are that last little 5% at the very top. If you have a specific health condition, like she mentioned, low androgens, right? So maybe she has like low testosterone or something. First off, hopefully you have gotten blood work done then, because I always say like test, don't guess. Like if you think there's an underlying health issue, go get blood work done. Don't just guess because you read a blog or something, right? And to take that a step further, I'm not a doctor. Maybe you want to be working with maybe even like a functional medicine doctor if you have a specific hormone, something going on. But supplements can certainly be helpful to support your lifestyle. If you're already sleeping well, managing stress, eating whole foods. For me personally, like I have gotten blood work after I've competed in shows and things like that. And my testosterone's always low. And usually my female sex hormones are also really low. But that's to be expected after a dieting phase to some regard, because I did just put my body through the ringer and through a lot of high stress. So when I have personally talked to my doctors about this, they'll be like, you just need a break. Like you just need a maintenance phase where you're eating adequate calories and literally taking care of yourself, sleeping more, things like that. And that can have a huge improvement. So sometimes we want to reach for supplements before we look at our lifestyle, but those lifestyle factors can be so huge. So, I mean, yes, something like ashwagandha that helps manage stress could potentially be helpful, but you also want to think about what is the root cause of that stress and how can I actually improve that, just to improve your overall lifestyle and your daily quality of life for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that there is like you said, just spending time eating a little bit more and getting out of the chronic dieting and chronic calorie deficit, like that in itself can fix so many problems. And like you said, like not just like we shouldn't be looking to put band-aids on these things, that you have to look at the root cause, like look at what's actually happening, because if you don't, then you're just going to continue to try to put band-aids on it, and it's just not going to be a good situation in the long run. So I completely agree. I do want to ask one thing, because this just came to mind from a client that I just recommended this, but in terms of creatine supplementation, especially for women, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Can you just talk maybe a little bit about creatine and why it might be advantageous, especially for women who are looking to build muscle?
Yeah, so creatine, I think, is the most studied supplement, I believe.
Yeah.
So it is generally recognized as safe for pretty much anyone to take. If you are looking for a supplement, I'd recommend a creatine monohydrate and something with Creapure in it to just make sure that you're getting high quality. But it can definitely help with muscle building, as well as I think there are other like health benefits that, as far as, decreasing even brain fog and things like that. We have a super in-depth guide specifically to creatine on the Tailored Coaching website. So check that out if you're curious. But I know I have had some women ask me if they should avoid it because you can see some water retention. I would say don't worry about that, because it might be very, very insignificant, even if you do see anything. I've never seen somebody start taking creatine and just like gain 5 pounds of water weight. So yeah, I'd say go for it, especially if you are in a building phase and you want that like little bit of extra boost. I think it's a really good supplement to add in.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I think, I mean, with any, like you said, with any supplements, that's like the last thing. It's like the 5%. But if you have everything else dialed in, like then yeah, maybe you take creatine. And I think, especially like you said, creatine is probably the most studied supplement out there. And if it gives you that extra, like allows you to like pump out that extra rep, or, you know, get a little bit more intensity, you know, during your lift, like that will add up over time, right? So I think that just for women in general, like you shouldn't be scared to take creatine, because it's not going to just make you like
I
blow
wish it
up.
made you blow up, man.
Yeah.
I've been taking creatine for a while. I guess I need
Yeah.
some more.
Yeah. And I would say like probably the average dose is like 4 to 5 grams. And it doesn't
Yes.
really matter when you, I mean, I always take it pre-workout just because that's when I remember.
I throw it in a shake. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think
exactly.
timing plays a role.
Yeah. And like, I don't think like loading really matters, that as long as you're consistent with it on a daily basis and you just continue with that. Would you agree?
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So I think this is actually one of the last questions. So someone asked, after having a baby, what are the most effective exercises to help rebuild your core?
I am not a mom, so I'm definitely not the best one to ask this question. But I would say it would be worthwhile to find a pelvic PT specialist, because I know a lot of women struggle with that, right? And I've researched this a little bit. And what I have read is that it's, you know, if you feel like you can't control your bladder when you're like squatting or lifting heavy or doing jump rope, that is not normal. So you should definitely invest in working on your pelvic floor health. And I know like YouTube, there's a ton of resources on there. I have also written kind of a basics of pregnancy blog on our website, and I linked a ton of resources there. But from people that I've talked to who have dealt with kind of that issue of needing to re-strengthen there, finding an actual specialist for pelvic health, it can be, you know, so helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely not a specialist in that either, but I think that makes sense, especially if you are struggling, if it's been going on for a while too.
Because I
I
don't
would say,
think it's just like doing a couple Kegels. Like,
yeah,
I think you need a little more than that.
yeah. And then also like with core training in general, a lot of people tend to think like, oh, I just need to do a bunch of crunches, or, you know, a lot of flexion when you're training. And it's like, there's so much more to it.
Our abs are not just those six-pack
Yeah.
muscles. Yeah, there's a lot that you can incorporate.
Yeah, for sure. I actually I do solo episodes too. So I recorded a podcast, which I'll link the blogs that you talked about, and this podcast, if whoever is listening or whoever asked this question, I record a podcast all about like core training and focusing not just on like those flexion exercises, but on breathing and bracing and all the anti movements, I don't know. I never say that. I'm like, is it anti or is it anti movement?
It's both, man.
Both, right? It's like you say your aunt or your aunt. Anyway, I will link that in the show notes, and it's just kind of going over like the basics to focus on when you're trying to incorporate, you know, building your core and doing it for both, you know, maybe aesthetic purposes. I can never say that word either. Versus also, you know, building a foundation, right, for functionality. So I think those are just important things that a lot of people just maybe don't think about or just don't, you know, realize. So
yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So I think that was pretty much all the questions. So I do have 2 final questions that I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So the first one is, and I always ask this to my guests, and I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but don't worry. So is there anything that you've changed your mind about in the last year, and why? And it doesn't have to be nutrition or fitness related. It can be literally anything.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, a main one that stands out to me is I've totally changed my perspective on bodybuilding. Because I cannot believe it's only been a year since I kind of started, but my journey was just crazy. I went from prep to prep to prep, which I probably should not have done, but kind of got talked into it by the first coach I worked with, who I stopped working with him. But I was pretty judgmental of people outside of the CrossFit space when I was drinking the Kool-Aid hardcore. And when I had all those life changes happen and I decided I was going to compete in bodybuilding and try it out, I mean, it was very, very eye-opening just to like learn that different sphere of fitness and to step out of my comfort zone and be with people who I used to kind of judge harshly, especially women in the bikini division, which is where I compete at the pro level now. And those women like work so hard to like, it is crazy the amount of work that goes into building even the quote unquote least muscular division. I mean, it's just so intense with having your training dialed in, your nutrition dialed in. So it really helped me just, I guess, see a different side of fitness and learn about it and step out of my comfort zone. It was just a really awesome period of growth. So I feel like I learned a lot through that. And one of the biggest takeaways is like, the more extreme your goal is, the more extreme, your sacrifices are going to be, and the more extreme changes you're going to have to make. So that was just, I guess, a really, really awesome experience over the past year of just digging into that realm of fitness and learning from the people in it and learning from something that's way different than what I was used to. So it was just really cool.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. Okay, and then the next one is there anything that you've been maybe implementing like in your own routine lately, whether it's nutrition, fitness, mindset, anything like that, that you've noticed benefits from like within the last few months, few weeks?
Yeah. So one thing that I have been working on, because so I finished my competition season last weekend. So now I'm heading into off season. I'm going to take a really long break. I'm actually going to try to not diet all of 2021 and just hold myself accountable to that, because I'm saying it here. My body needs a break.
You're accountable.
Right. And one thing, I've been really digging Stephanie Buttermore's videos on YouTube lately with her kind of all-in journey. And one thing that I didn't even realize I did, that I have been working on a lot now, which she calls body checking, which is like, if I'm definitely guilty of this, which I didn't even know it was a thing, but like you wake up, you check your abs, you eat a meal, you like look at yourself from the side to see if you're still like staying lean, or you go to the gym and you're just looking at how your body looks the whole time, like brush your teeth, check your abs again, and I think since I've just been pushing for such aesthetic goals for so long, I got wrapped up in it, to be totally honest. And so I've been really challenging myself these past couple of weeks, and especially as I head into my off season, to stop doing that and just like close my eyes for a second and think about how I feel, because I have, competing has definitely made me lose touch a little bit with how I actually feel and how my body feels and my health, and trying to separate that from a specific image or how my body is looking. Right. So I've already noticed like how much more in tune I feel with my body, just taking a second to think about how I feel versus what I look like in the mirror. So I'm excited to kind of experiment more with that mindset piece as I take a longer off season.
I love that. I love that. And I can absolutely relate to, especially like, being in a building phase, which we talked about. It's like, those are the things that you have to focus on, what you feel like, and know that like when you look in the mirror, it's not, maybe it's not like what you want to see necessarily, but embracing what I've been calling getting, comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And realizing that it's all part of the process. And yeah, so I completely agree. And then also, I might have to have you on in a year from now to talk all about your non-dieting in 2021, because that's awesome. And I think it's really cool to see. And I think this is also like, I feel like a lot of, for me, when I'm talking about like going through these phases, right, in my nutrition and my, training and all of that, like sometimes my family members and some other friends, like they just don't get it. They're like, well, why are you going to like put yourself through that?
Oh yeah.
And I think especially if you're a coach and you're coaching other people through these things, it's like super important to do it yourself, right? Like, so if I had never gone through like my own kind of transformation and also going through this building phase now, then it's like so hard to relate to what's going on. And not saying that like every coach has to like go through their own transformation, but I think you have to like kind of put yourself in that situation somehow to really, you know, understand what's going on and to have empathy and stuff for that. So I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I'm definitely going to have you back on in maybe even sooner than that. But anyway, this was super fun. Do you want to tell our listeners like where they can find you, social media, website, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So probably the best way to connect with me is going to be Instagram. At Caroline Ofenstein _TCM is my handle. And then I mentioned a lot of blogs, so we'll just throw the website or throw the blog page in the episode notes too, so you guys can check out the website there.
Sweet. Yeah, I will link all of that in the show notes. And yeah, this was awesome.
Thank you so much. I had a blast.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I might have to have you on sooner than a year because I feel
Let's
like
do it. I'm game.
Like a bunch of different things. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.